What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler's here, talking some Packers with y'all on some extra cheese for you here at Cheesehead TV's YouTube channel. Hope you're a subscriber. If not, could you solve that? Hit subscribe. Say hi. Ismail has already done so. Hi, what's up? Oscar, go Pack go, indeed. He's hanging out in the studio today. Again, sans anybody to help me out, so... It's lonely here at LiveX this week. I gotta say, I need Corey and the crew to come back. Yo, Bear still sucks. Zachary keeping it real. Give me all that extra cheese. I hear you, David. I hear you. Eduardo, how am I? I'm not great. I literally just found out that I wouldn't say his close friend, but a buddy that I know from the bar. His name is Neil Kirby. Passed away this morning. Literally just talked to him the other day. And literally just found this out about half hour ago. So, man, you never know. Hug your friends, hug your loved ones. You never know when things are going to be taken away from you. Guy was an amazing drummer, just one of the best souls I'd ever met. We had long talks about all sorts of stuff throughout the last couple of years. Messaged with him yesterday. This morning he's gone. It's crazy, man. Chance Kaiser is the number 2 quarterback again this year. I'd say there's a decent chance, especially the further into this offseason we get and they don't bring in any other competition. Now, I do think Tim Boyle presents a challenge, and I think he'll have the opportunity to compete. But, they've got a significant investment as far as trading for a quarterback. They spent, a talented defensive back. Clearly they wanted out of a locker room, but they gave up some talent and a productive player to get Kaiser. And I think they're going to give him every opportunity to win the backup job. But it'll be fun to watch that play out throughout the offseason and obviously especially in camp and preseason. How does Cole Madison's return affect the offensive line in the draft? Billy Turner signing a regret now that we have Madison? Mike, I don't think so. I don't think it's a regret as far as going out and signing significant depth. And don't forget, what Turner gives you is a guy, and this is most likely why he was paid the way he was, is a guy who can come in and play any of the 4 positions outside of center. His versatility makes him really valuable. And he is trending upward. And now, obviously, he's not going to step in and be Brian Bulaga, but if you need him at right tackle, he can play that at what I would consider a much better, much higher level than you've seen from Jason Spriggs the last few years. So I don't think that's a regret at all. As far as Cole Madison coming back and, what it means for the draft, I would suspect the Packers knew this was coming. I'm sure they were in communication with he and his representatives. I think this has probably been kind of on their end, something they've known about and have been, planning with the idea, the knowledge of that he would be there. I still think it's something you got to look to. I don't think it helps not box you in as far as got to get some depth along the offensive line. But if a guy is there, you're on the clock and there's a value there at any of the offensive line positions, I think you absolutely should take it. And, the last thing you want to be is ending up where the Packers were the last couple of years where, guys like Jason Spriggs were supposed to be the answer to offensive line depth, and yet they found themselves with precious little of it. So, I don't think it solves anything. I don't think it changes much, but it certainly helps. There's no doubt about that. Hey, Nags, isn't it crazy how the last healthy season Rodgers had was an NFC Championship game? 2 years can cause a lot of stories. Yeah, I mean, yes, it's always funny because people say, "Oh, they've been terrible for so long," and it's like I get that on Twitter a lot. And they were a game away from the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Now, obviously, that team ran out of gas. I think no one would mistake that team that was beat in Atlanta for a true kind of Super Bowl contender. But they pulled off some major victories, especially that one down in Dallas. And yes, that was the last season we saw Rodgers fully healthy, and they were, pretty damn good when they ran the table. But most of that was on his brilliance. I mean, I have been on the record. Everyone knows I am a Favre guy through and through, but that stretch from the Philadelphia game Monday night through the Atlanta game, the NFC Championship game, is probably the greatest stretch of quarterback play I have ever seen. I mean, as far as sustained level, dragging his team where he wants it to go, that's some of the most, if not the most, incredible display of playing the position of quarterback in the NFL that I have ever seen. It was pretty special. When Gutekunst took over, he said he was going to be in on every conversation. Seeing every trade talk and free agent talk this offseason, it sure seems like he lived up to it. Mike, I would caution against media knowing about it and reporting about it and seeing their name mentioned in a lot of these conversations. I do think he is in on everything, as he said he would be. But I would contend, and I would I'd be able to tell you point blank, that was kind of pretty much the case under Ted Thompson. It just didn't get out as much. There were plenty of trades that Ted was involved in where he didn't pull the trigger, whether it was Marshawn Lynch, whether it was Tony Gonzalez, etc. But a lot of those calling to do your due diligence afternoons or moments, those went unreported back when Thompson was in charge. Now, I think these things are the information is free flowing a little bit more with agents and NFL insiders, so to speak. So while I do think he has done a good job of being in on those conversations, I don't think it's that drastic a change from what was going on under Thompson, because they called on everything. When Alonzo and Elliott were in the building, those guys, they made all those calls. Gutekunst himself made those calls. They just didn't get talked about or reported about as much. Rodgers performs best when the national doubt cycles. Would you agree? Yes and no. I do think he plays better with a chip on his shoulder. That's been his MO pretty much his entire career. We'll see if this helps manifest one. It is interesting how this Bleacher Report article last year kept looking for that galvanizing moment that never really arrived. Could this be the galvanizing moment? Actually, could we put the galvanizing moment out to pasture along with the fullback dive? That'd be great. Thanks. Aaron reported he played on a fractured leg yesterday. A tibula. I can't remember the exact medical term. It was broadcast on ESPN Wisconsin this morning. A injury that sidelined TJ Watt. Aaron Rodgers was out there. And as suspected, he confirmed that the MCL sprain, which is really a tear, was re-aggravated in that game, that tackle on the sideline in Detroit. So he was pretty banged up last year. And I will only say this. This is something I got asked about on Twitter. Does that change this is, kind of a paraphrasing of the question. Does it change your evaluation of what Rodgers did last year? I mean, it certainly changes my appreciation of what he did. But as far as your play between the white lines, you step on the field, you will be judged accordingly by what you put on tape. Everybody's fighting through something. Now, yes, is that an extreme example and incredibly noteworthy and admirable? 100%, absolutely. But, those check downs were still available, whether his leg was in pain or not. The design of the offense was still available to him and probably should have been utilized more rather than trying to break outside the pocket and use his mobility, which he admitted today. It's caused him issues, robbed him of some of the mobility he's used to. We saw some of that come into play where he couldn't quite get around corners he used to be able to get to, couldn't quite outrun linebackers and defensive ends the way he might have in the past. So, you step on the field, you're judged accordingly. He still put up incredible numbers, So you can only tip your hat to him. And it's funny because it reminded me of the very first interaction I ever had with Aaron Rodgers, which was on Twitter back in 2008 or 9. It was after a Pittsburgh game in Pittsburgh. It might have been 8 because it might have been his first year as a starter. And he got walloped on a play where I think a couple of Steelers hit him, but one in particular hit him right here in the chin with the crown of his helmet. And Rodgers was laying on the ground after the play. And some medical staff started to gather and started to run onto the field, and he waved them off, got up, got in the huddle, called the play, and kept playing. And it was a vicious shot. And I just remember putting up a post on Cheesehead TV, I believe it was that Monday, where I say, can we appreciate how tough this kid is? I mean, we've spent, 16 years, whatever, talking about Favre and his toughness and the streak and what have you. But look at that play. Look at that freaking hit that he just took and gets up and waves off the medical staff. That showed me something. That showed me right then and there what Rodgers was about as far as his toughness goes. And there were some questions about that early in his career because of the fact that he was injured in limited playing time early on in his career when he came in for Favre. So that, to me, said all you really needed to know as far as how tough he was. And I posted it and I tweeted it. And he actually responded and said, I really appreciate that. And that was the first time we'd ever gone back and forth on anything. So, I've, been on this Rodgers is a tough son of a gun train for a very long time. And that story about playing through that leg injury all of last year, not missing a single game. I can only say it so many times. I'm going to keep saying it. He's a fucking Jedi. And that there's no greater compliment I can pay the man. If Gutekunst had an offensive lineman in mind in the first round, I doubt Madison changes that at all. Great to have him in, though. Yeah, I don't think it's a question of there's two things there. I don't think there's anybody that he's probably targeting in the first round. I do think they'll go through their draft board and tier it out. And if there's a first round value there when they're on the clock, it will certainly be considered. But yeah, I agree with you, that point there, that, yeah, it doesn't change how they want to approach the draft or what they think they might need to come out of the draft with to consider it successful. Do you think LaFleur will change Rodgers' tendency to count the play clock down all the way to 3 seconds? Brian, I certainly hope so. I think that's one of the things, and Rodgers kind of alluded to it in the radio interview this morning, one of those things that they will undoubtedly be talking about as far as offensive philosophies and how they want to approach playing on the offensive side of the ball. Remember, it's a whole new program now. Rodgers, let us know that they're being quizzed on, formations and personnel, etc., starting tomorrow morning. Well, actually, that was spoken yesterday and then played this morning, so it would have been today. Interesting to see how those guys fare as far as the quiz goes, but it's all brand new. These guys got to dive into these playbooks and everything, this way of working in a way they haven't had to for a long time in Green Bay. That includes QB1. I would like another dynamic safety with Amos. Pettin would have a field day with that. I tend to agree. I think it's going to have to come through the draft. I would be surprised if they went via free agency at this point, but you never know. Maybe they sign a safety right before the draft just to keep their options as wide open as possible when they're on the clock. Speaking of Jedi, are you going to Star Wars Celebration? I am not. My oldest daughter is, though, with a bunch of her friends. Pray for me. Is the play clock thing Rodgers' call? Yes and no. I mean, it's definitely a style of play that he's developed over the last 5 years or so because, and I've asked him about this a few times, he likes to get as much information as possible. That's always been his line. He wants to get as much info as he can before the snap of the ball. And by taking the clock all the way down, he is able to do that. Now, we've seen the downside of all this, especially last year. Multiple wasted timeouts, delay of game penalties, ruined drives because of it, etc. I do think that is definitely something that LaFleur is going to have to address. And I'd give anything to be a fly on the wall when that happens. Nags, are you excited for the draft? I was. And then it takes so damn long to get here that I get unexcited. I will get excited about it again. But at this point, it takes forever to get here. Man, you know what? I'd miss the draft being at the Madison Square Garden Theater. You guys, oh my God, that venue was amazing. This little theater underneath Madison Square Garden. It's where they held the draft when I first moved to New York. It was just incredible. And the energy in that room was insane. And they served beer. It was amazing. It was incredible. And I actually really loved the draft at Radio City. I didn't like it at Javits Center, but at Radio City, it was great. Now it's gotten so big. They've taken it out on the road. It's such a production, and they've elongated the calendar. The lead up to the draft is so ridiculous. It kind of sucks the joy out of it for me. But like I said, when we get closer to the draft, I'll get more pumped up about it. There's no doubt about that. Oh, why does Colin Cowherd hate the Packers so much? Who cares? Are you doing a mock draft? I didn't think I was going to, but maybe I will. I don't. Everyone does one, right? Like, so I did one for the paper last year, and that was kind of fun, actually. I enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I would. So maybe I will. Radio City was great too. Yeah, it was. I have a story to tell you, but it's long. What's the best way to get it to you, Katie? Aaron at cheeseheadtv.com. The first round gets as much pub as the Super Bowl. It's amazing. Jeremy, it's incredible. And they only keep adding media partners. It's nuts. ABC is putting the whole thing in prime time on network television this year. It's crazy. And that's in addition to everything else that's covering the draft already. Did Cole Madison get paid last year? He got part of his bonus, but he did not get a salary. Any word yet on the preseason game with Oakland, where that will be played? They were talking Canada. James, I know Canada is still in play. Not quite sure of the exact location, but I do know that's still being discussed. But no, there's no official word yet on where it will be. Any thoughts on Jennings' comments today responding to... Sorry. I'm sorry. Where was I? Draft guide is awesome. Great job. Thanks, Terrence. Thanks to everybody who purchased one. If you haven't, what are you waiting for? You're a Packers fan. You need to own it. It's amazing. You just said that. Not me. JJ Watt coming back home. Sam, yeah, I saw JJ's tweet. He's excited to be coming to Wisconsin. The Texans are going to be joining the Packers for a few joint practices leading up to their preseason game. I mean, it's a whole new ball game in Green Bay right now. We haven't had joint practices since Sherman did it in, I don't remember what year it was. It was the Buffalo Bills, though, that came to town. I remember that. But yeah, it's been a long time. Never happened with Ted and Mike. Nags, what do you think about Rodgers on comment Greg Jennings and Jermichael? Sorry, what? Can you see J.J. Watt heading to the Packers near the end of his career, given his past in Wisconsin? Yeah, Brian, I think it's an outside possibility, sure. But I have to think the Texans will kind of keep him in the fold. You know, he's pretty much a made man down there. Hey, from Vancouver. Ryan, hey, from New York City. What's up? Tailgate tours, pretty neat. Glad they still do that. I love it. I think it's fun as hell. It's a great idea. I was actually texting with Ryan Grant on the bus earlier today. And he said, because he hadn't done it before, he was like, this is really cool. I think the guys get a bigger kick out of it than a lot of the kids do that they go to these schools. I saw Aaron Campman walking in looking like Gandalf with his gray beard. These kids, they had to have been some of them probably not even born yet when these guys were playing. Some of these guys are playing. It's crazy. But yeah, it's a fun idea. I'm glad they do it. And they seem to expand it a lot the last couple of years, which is just great because there's a lot of people in the state of Wisconsin who love the Packers who never have the opportunity to get anywhere close to Lambeau Field. So I think it's really smart on the organization's part. Was Mike McCarthy soft? Your take. He did run kind of a club med there as things went along, not a lot of hitting. Definitely erred on the side of analytics and science, although that should make him a smart coach, right? But yeah, his identity was never a nasty, smash mouth team. You're obviously always a kind of a reflection of your coach. And it is odd because like the whole thing when he was hired was he was Pittsburgh macho, but then he never had hitting in practice and in camp and, always kind of favored the offense, et cetera. And so that part in that article, I recognized that. Now that said, does that make Mike soft? I don't know. I guess that's up to each individual to define. My take is it's hard to call a guy who did what he did at such a high level for so long soft. Where's Banky? I haven't seen him in a while. Gregory, he is in Las Vegas at a conference called NAB. Don't even ask me what that stands for. It's National Association of Broadcasters, I think. But yeah, there's a humongous conference in Vegas every year right before the draft. It's really annoying. But so yeah, he's there with a bunch of our people throughout this week. So I'm chilling. Do you think this is Kevin King's last chance to stay healthy and become a significant player in the secondary? I mean, last chance. He's still got 2 more years on his deal, right? So I don't think they'll cut him out of spite if he can't stay healthy. But if he doesn't stay healthy this year, yeah, I would say they will probably look to move on once his rookie deal is up. Unless, he balls out and stays healthy that final year and they give him some kind of incentive-laden deal to stick around. But you never know. Anyone in here without the Cheesehead TV draft guide needs to pounce on it. Tremendous content and value. Jeremy, your check is in the mail. Thank you, buddy. Why didn't Spriggs' game translate to the NFL? Hillary, that is an excellent question. And it's funny because, the weak parts of his game that you saw in college, particularly the thing about getting beat inside, is just something that never got fixed. And obviously, James Campen was one of the best offensive line, still is one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. For whatever reason, couldn't make it work. And to me, that's the great mystery. That's the great kind of differentiator when it comes to NFL talent and the projection of it, that, it's all well and good for us to sit here as outsiders and do our mock drafts, etc. But there's so many things that go into a guy being successful, whether it is his own God-given talent, whatever it is his coaching, what scheme he's in, all those things kind of add to the mix. And for whatever reason, that never coalesced for Spriggs. I do think you can look at cut-ups of him and find good plays. You can find where the talent is. But, especially you are a tackle in the NFL. On 3rd and long, you are going to be counted on to protect your quarterback. And time again, Spriggs gets beat the same way. And doesn't seem to improve, doesn't seem to correct those mistakes. So to me, that's a mental thing. And for whatever reason, he just can't hone the technique needed to make that change and to significantly improve at what's a pretty important, essential part of his job. How would you feel if the Packers traded up into the top 5 to get Allen or Williams? Woo, I'd be surprised. But it'd be fun. It'd be a good time. Thoughts on Brian Burns? I think he's going to go really high. I think his athleticism coupled with his tape is going to get him drafted in the top 10. Now watch. He'll get drafted in the 2nd round. Who knows? But, yeah, I think he's a beast, and I'll be surprised if he falls to the Packers at 12. Thoughts on A.J. Brown with the 30th pick? Jace, I mentioned that yesterday. I love that idea. I think he would be an excellent addition. Cut Crosby. Woohoo! They're out here. They're out here today. I think bring in competition for Crosby. Sure. Yeah, I'm down with that. Outright cut him? I'm not ready for that yet. All right, nice. I got my son to sign up. Told him you are a Packer god and we are Star Wars nuts. Well, Tim, that's mighty kind of you. I am no Packer god. I am just a Packer nerd / blogger / fan, much like anybody else here. It's always great to talk to you guys. Star Wars, yes. Star Wars always. Which wide receiver draft pick from last year will not be on the team next year? Woo-hoo! Ask me again during training camp once we see how these guys are translating their year 1 to year 2 work and their development, because that's going to go a long way in determining the answer to that question. All right, everybody, I'm going to have to jump. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours. As everyone's telling you, get that draft guide. It's good stuff. And more than anything else, if you don't want to spend money, if you don't want to support us with the draft guide or becoming a Patreon member, just hit subscribe. If you can do any one thing for Cheesehead TV, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Trying to get to 20,000 before the draft. Took a pretty decent jump yesterday. Needed to make some bigger jumps these next couple days. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow or maybe tonight if some more news breaks. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Have a good night.